question, Brittany. So on the order, you had never requested non-compliance for the realty?
Oh wait, no, this one I'm not requesting non-compliance for.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah.
That's it?
And that's no.
Bob? No questions. I've got no questions. Rocky, onto your presentation, please.
Thank you. We're following the Board of Revision decision on realty, and we have done a calculation, and that calculation is shown on page 3. It's a very simple calculation because there was a cap rate change and everything else was applied at what the assessment department had for parameters. Now, there's a very interesting way you can look at this order. The assessor mentioned $10 was the rent. That's if you put in the 5% non-recoverables. So if they want to agree to 5% non-recoverables, I'd go with $10, but they didn't. They want no non-recoverables. So the rent works out to $9.83. That's just the way things work. It's a no-win situation for the city. It's either $9.83 rent or $10 with 5% non-recoverables with the board decision made. So we're asking that that number be carried forward, and our calculation is shown on page 1. And yes, we are in agreement on the air-conditioned area.
Brittany, any questions?
My question is, what number net rent did you ask for at the realty hearing? Because I had it as the $10, so that's why I just was wondering why they would have went lower than the $10.
Right, because we had no idea as to whether or not the non-recoverables were included in that or not. And as I said, it's a lose-lose situation for the assessor. You either accept $9.83 here today as the rent with no non-recoverables, or we'll go to 10, but that means you are acquiesced to using 5% non-recoverables.
I had just come up with a different.
Sure, and
because no one asked for $9.83 at the board, so that's why I was just curious how they came up with it. So that's all my questions. Thank you.
Brett?
Right.
Bob?
No question.
That concludes that matter. Let's move on to the next one of 3965.
Just a quick, brief summation here.
Okay.
I don't think the assessor has the right to go back to ask the same question over at a hearing. It's been decided on by the Board of Revision. They'll come back with the same evidence and expecting a different result. That's not the proper way. If they had come up with some other reason, some different reason, I think you should consider it. But I mean, they can just live to fight another day. If they don't like that it was changed, they can appeal this rather than put the burden on the taxpayer. Thank you.
Brittany, anything you want to say on that?
We appealed the realty to the board, so we'll probably appeal this one as well. That's just how it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members ready to go to 3965. Bob, you got it open?
Sorry?
Did you open up 3965 yet?
Well, not yet, sir. I thought you were still talking about this one. Okay.
Brittany, when you are ready.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5878. Address is Unit 90, 3965 Portage Avenue. Business Assessment ID 33179. We have a premise area of 33,959 square feet and a base annual rental value of $13.47 per square foot. And just note for the air conditioning, we have a lower area in the premise area. So on the bottom of this page, I just have some photos. On page 2, again, those are just the comparables. They'll be the same ones throughout every one of my brief because these are all vehicle dealerships. And on page 3, I have the Board of Revision order, and it just says the decision is based on the Assessment and Taxation Department net operating income. And just to note, this one was appealed to municipal board by Colliers. So my recommendation is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $536,460. Thank you.
Rocky, questions?
No, I think we've covered it all.
Brent?
No
Bob? Okay. None. On to your presentation, Mr. Newfield.
This particular property is a bit more complex in that it being in the auto mall, there's some infrastructure costs that have to be calculated out. And we had worked out the number applied and come up with a value of $11 a square foot. And that's what we're looking for on page 1, along with the cost to occupy. And I think we've got the same air conditioned area and we have the same rentable area. That's my presentation.
Bob, question? None? Brent?
Just one question, Rocky. I'm looking at your workup. So is the $79,020, is that for the infrastructure?
No, that's a subtotal
Of those costs.
Occupancy costs. Yeah, we, as I said, the difficulty with this is the realty order has a deduction from rent for these costs, and then it has a further deduction from on net present value of repair. So there's 2 deductions in the condo thing for all of Point West. And so when you get the rent, say for example the rent is 373,000, or that's probably like 390,000. But then there's like a $17,000 deduction from the rental value for the cost that the owner normally paid. So essentially what we're doing is converting a gross rate into a net rate by subtracting those infrastructure costs. And those costs are for maintaining the streets and the lights and the rest of the things that the city normally does, because these roads have been turned over to the public to use, but are owned by the condo corporation. So this was decided in 2004, and both sides, after a very interesting time, we did come to an agreement back in 2004 that these costs should be considered, and it stayed in place until the present time. So that's why I'm saying that the net number isn't the assessor's net operating income number. It is the rent subtracting those infrastructure costs. And I don't have those right in front of me. But our office worked it out that it's a net of $11. Okay, is that confusing enough?
No, thanks.
That's confusing.
I'm not sure if during your time you ever saw this case. I know you were in a different division, but originally it was Ken DeRoche and his successor handling this and as a supervisor. So very amicable settlement.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move on to 1900 Main Street.
This is file number 19-5802. Address is 1900 Main Street. Business assessment ID 43398. We have a total premise area of 41,600, and we have it broken up into 4 different premises. As I put here, the blended annual rental rate per square foot is $10.28. We also have some air-conditioned areas removed. Owner occupied. I have some photos at the bottom here. On page 2 is the comparables we looked at. And then on page 3, I have the board revision order. So it was based on an adjusted net operating income, which works out to about $33,000 or $336,000. And then our NOI at this hearing was about $405,000. And Mr. Neufield's was $322,746. So it looks like they were closer to his NOI. So what I worked out was that they most likely had went to the number he had asked for, which was $11 per square foot. So just want to point that out. And then my recommendation today is just to defend what we defended at Realty, which is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $517,320. Thank you.
Question, Rocky?
Yes, in your, so you admit that your 1028 wasn't upheld, that they made a change in that?
No, and then I guess I should have also pointed out, I think we have a difference in premise area, which
yeah.
accounts for the,
Okay.
yeah. So it looks like they went more with your leasable area and then the $11 you asked for.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Well, okay. Now on that leasable area, I'm looking at the premise ID listed as 32589 for 5,600 square feet. Can
Yes.
you describe that area?
From what I had read, it was a mezzanine area, storage.
Mezzanine storage. Have you been in it?
No, I have not.
Now, does the assessment department assess racking?
We assessed mezz areas, that's what I went off of.
But you haven't seen it
No,
to
I haven't.
determine that it's racking?
No, I never
Okay,
inspected
thank you.
this.
That's my questions.
Bob, any questions?
No, not at all.
Brent, any questions?
I have no questions.
And I've got no questions. Mr. Newfield, on with your
Oh,
presentation.
sorry, and was this appealed? No one appealed this
I
decision.
don't think this one was appealed to municipal.
Okay. Yes, so we have the areas of dispute. I rather agree with the assessor on the workup. But I think what the board decided, so we don't know what they decided because they just said adjusted net operating income. At dispute was 5,600 square feet of racking. Now, a picture of that is shown on page 6, and that's the middle left picture. So that's a plywood deck over steel racking, and those are boxes stored. And that clearance, I would hit my head on the truss because it's about 5.5 feet. So we don't consider this to be rentable space at all. It's just part of the part storage below and on racking.
Is this where the boxes are?
Correct. And the space below it, so you can see, is right beside it. And you see where the tires are stacked. That's the underside of it. So you can see the trusses on the racking above, and it's open. And again, this is a low ceiling space as well. This is about 7 feet. So they have separated it for, basically added a deck to get more storage area and to be able to access it easier. Very, very common in auto dealerships. So we've never included this in our rentable area. So we have 36,000 feet. There is a small mezzanine, which is finished office, which we don't disagree, and that's 1,600 feet. And the 4,000 feet is the underside of that area. After taking off the 1,600, that's the parts storage, and then the 30,400 is all the space in the back, the body shop and the service area. So it is 36,000 rentable feet by anybody's standards, and we did calculate that at 985. But I tend to agree with the assessor that I think that working at 36,000, I think the rate would actually be a bit higher than that. But this is our number. Thank you.
Brent, any questions?
So I had written down, so I guess it is a bit different. I had the $11 times the 36,000 square feet, which was 396,000 plus occupancy. So
Yeah, and you're right. It's a rather vague decision.
And then my only other thing was just that, if there is a dispute with the mezz, I can always set an inspection.
Well, and actually, I have another way of looking at this is, one could really just delete your 56. No, that's more than I'm asking for. How does this work out? What sort of voodoo math is this? Oh, I know, I'm reading the wrong thing. The actual assessment is 517,320, right?
But
Yeah, okay. I know, I'm reading this all funny. Yeah, I think actually, the assessors, I'm gonna concede that $11 was the number, and our number should be $39,600 higher. And that should be a value of $394,200.
of what?
$394,200.
That's even lower.
It's lower than
Plus
432.
occupancy cost.
You were.
I've come up with 473,864.
Just a second.
You went something backwards.
Where'd you say 472?
473. So if we were to take the 36 times the 11, I think it comes out to 396,000. And then if we just add the occupancy cost at the bottom.
Okay, 472,064. My apologies.
472.
064, which round as a multiple of 12 is 472,056. I believe that correctly interprets the board order.
Questions, Brent?
I have no questions.
Bob?
I did have a question before this change, but just wanted to ask. You raised a point that the boxes are being stored,
Yes.
and so you're saying because of the height and so forth, there shouldn't be any square footage at all, right?
Well, it's a combination of height and the fact that it's racking. Like
But still,
it's rack. Yeah, you don't go into a
so you're
warehouse and
saying
tax
there
racks.
shouldn't be any square footage for rent at all.
That's correct. It's an extension
But
of
what would
storage.
happen if the dealership now didn't have that space? They have to go off-site, and they have to put it somewhere else. They would have to pay rent somewhere else.
No.
They wouldn't get a rent
No,
for
it's
that
a
for
semantic
free.
argument. Why don't you just look at it instead and say, pull out the aisles, and instead of having a nice convenient aisle to pick your rack, just run the rack straight up. That's what it's all about.
I'm just saying that when you're saying that doesn't have any value for rent, that is still helping the company. And in effect, if you had to move that off to an premises, you'd have to pay some rent.
And I'm saying that's not what happens in these dealerships, and you're gonna see pictures later that show it in greater detail. The
Even I don't
floor,
have to get to disagree, okay?
well, you can disagree with me, but I'm telling you the way the market would look at this space, we don't count it. And what we've added is the convenience of a walkway between shelves. That's all that's been added, and that's not taxable. It should instead be looked at a continuation of the higher ceiling space, and somebody has just constructed a nice walkway to access it. There would be no less storage room if the walkway didn't exist, because they would still store their boxes on top of the top shelf of the rack.
I have no other question.
Brent?
I have no question.
On your page 3, Rocky, you got two different workups there, one for the assessment department, one for the board decision. How did you come up with your, because you had 1028 on the.
Yeah.
So is that the one you're agreeing to, is the 1028 workup that comes at 427?
No, I had just worked the decision backwards. We're actually higher than 1028. We're actually at $11 overall, but applied to only 36,000 feet, rather than the assessment department is 1028 and applied to 41,000 feet. So the actual decision would, I believe, be the smaller area at $11. And I think that was our mutual calculation.
I found when I worked it back, the NOI that they decided upon was closer to his. So there was a few discrepancies, but it was mostly what he had worked up. So the one on his page 3 is mostly the assessment parameters.
Right.
So I found it was more towards his. That's why I used that one.
Okay. I just wanted to understand where it was coming from. Okay, that concludes that matter. Let's move to 2000 Main Street.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5872. Address is 2000 Main Street. Business assessment ID 53551. We have a total premise area of 43,693 square feet, which works out to a blended rate per square foot of $11.88. But we do have the two premises listed here. And we have a lower area on the air conditioners that I want to point out. On the bottom of the page, I just have some photos of the property. On page 2 is the same comparables we've gone through. And on page 3, I have the Board of Revision decision for realty, which went with the applicant's net operating income. which I think was asked for a rate of about $9.85 per square foot. There might have been a bit of discrepancy on the premise area. But otherwise, the city has appealed this further to the municipal board, so I'm defending that value here today. And my recommendation is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $616,560. Thank you.
Rocky?
And again, this is the same evidence from the realty hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the discrepancy in the square footage, you have that document in your possession, building plans. I believe that they were actually supplied by the assessor to me. And I put a bad photocopy in my workup.
I did not add one to my brief.
Okay.
There was no note to say to change the lease lawyers, so I just defended what we had had.
Okay. And so you're not aware of the debate over the space on at Realty.
I knew there was a debate, but there was no note to say to like change it, so that's why I just went with what we had.
Other than the fact that the board did decide to use our net operating income, which was at the
Yes.
square footage we had said, yes. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Brent?
I have no questions.
Bob?
No questions.
I've got no questions. Mr. Newcomb, what is your presentation?
Thank you. So this one was actually, I think, very cut and dried as far as what the board ordered, because there was a discrepancy on space, and the property had been renovated recently. It's an original age of 1951, and the front showroom was renovated, and the back body shop and service area were not. And these renovations included some upper level space as well as the showroom and a new receiving area. So when we took this to appeal, our first supplemental, our surprise, the assessor submitted the plans as evidence, and I apologize we have such a poor copy for you, but this is the assessor's workup, not workup, this was their evidence in the 2017 supplemental, because it's got their highlight on it. Now, I don't highlight pages, they did. What it says there is that it gives a number, a total area of 40,839, and that's based on approximately 30. I don't have my realty file with me, but so this is just very approximately 38,000 on the main and a further 2,000 or so on the upper level. And what the assessment department has is the difference is all attributable to upper level space. Now, the upper level space that was in question is shown on page, first of all, page 7, you can see that there's the stairwell to it, and the upper level space has a small meeting room on page 8 and a change room on page 8. We did include that space. The space we excluded was on page, I'm getting there. Page 10, incidentally, this was part of the space that we excluded the upper level. And you can see we have the upper and the lower levels. There's more of this racking. Here we can see that the racking is actually exposed and it merely exists as a ladder and a walkway on a larger open space. Same issue as 1900 Main, same issue you're going to hear later for 23 Rothwell. This is not rentable space. This is a convenience to reach your top rack, period. The excluded portions, other than that, that was one excluded portion. The second excluded portion was page 13. And this is page 13 and 14. This is a very long hallway that runs the entire width of the building. And this was a dead space that was between the usable mezzanine areas and the work area. That is a 5-foot clear beam on page 13. There is no human occupancy up there. It's paper file storage. and no one's bothered cleaning it out. And I imagine the records must date from 1951 that are in here. Totally obsolete. None of the other dealers I work for now carry this sort of paper storage. Everybody, of course, is electronic. And I imagine they just haven't got around to throwing it out because it's not in their way and they can't do anything with the space regardless. It is not rentable under anybody's definition, and nor is there any need to store this off-site. It's just dead storage. Lastly, on page 15 is the registration under the Manitoba Environment Contaminated Impact Sites Program, and you can see that 2000 Main Street is on the registered list. Having heard all those facts, the board decided and agreed with us on rent. That did work out to $9.85 per square foot on 40,839 square feet. And again, the assessor doesn't like it. They have the right to file an appeal. There is nothing new that's presented to you today by either side. And so I would suggest that if the matter's been ruled on, and if the assessor expects a different result, they can take it to municipal board. Thank you.
This is appeal to the municipal board, is it not?
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
Any questions?
So for the mezzanine, like normally when I would go into a VCD, I would consider this a mezz area, but maybe just like a lower, like it is.
Which page are you talking?
Page 10. Like the other property, I couldn't really tell what the height was and whatnot, but this one would be considered a mezzanine typical.
No. This the page 10 you're looking at is the underside of the top and the bottom of the same assembly. And what that you see they've done there, it's a rack. That's racking. Those aren't columns holding that floor up, like structural columns. Mm-hmm. Those are storage columns. And there's a big difference between a structural column rated for weight and a storage column that is part of the racking system.
Okay, so this was on a floor plan. Would it be listed as mezz space or would it just?
It was on the floor plans that were submitted. It clearly shows that it's where the part storage is.
Okay, that's one of my questions. Thank you.
Right.
I have no questions.
Bob.
Rocky, just so that I have the concept that you're proposing. This is the square footage, it's empty, goes way up to here,
Yeah.
okay? So we take like page 10, and it's up here, and then we put a rack up here, and put some more stuff up here.
Well, it's the
Wait a
same,
minute, let me
yeah.
finish. What you're saying is that is still the same square footage, going from the top to the bottom to the sides, right?
Yeah.
Is that your
Yes.
basically
And
concept?
take a look at page 10, and it clearly shows that the racking goes from
Right.
floor,
So it
floor
goes
to
way up to
ceiling.
here, we've cut it off here, we've added a little more, so we've used some height for a little more space for storage.
It was envisioned.
But but in your case, you're just calculating the whole thing
Yes.
and not calculating where I cut it off at the top. Is that right?
It is.
Just, I'm asking, is that what your
That
theory
is
is?
correct.
Okay, now that I understand where you're coming
Okay.
from.
Okay, that concludes that matter?
And just as a conclusion here,
Yeah.
if I, as an appraiser, were to bring this forward as rentable space, I would be committing a violation of standards. We don't bring it. If a broker brought this to the market and said to sell it and called it 43,000 square feet, it's a violation of the standards. So that's just an added point to this. You can't make up space on racking. Thank you.
Thank you. Concludes that matter. Next property up is 33 Oak Point Road. When you are ready.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5909. Address is 33 Oak Point Highway. Business assessment ID 4715. We have a total premise area of 51,783 square feet, which is broken into below 5 premises. Our blended annual rental rate per square foot is $10.45. We have removed air conditioning on 4 of these premises. This is an owner-occupied building, and I have some subject property photos below. If we turn to page 2, I just have my comparables listed here we've gone through. On page 3 is the board revision order based on the applicant's evidence. From my understanding, that would have been a blended rate of $6.34. And then the city has further appealed this to the municipal board. So my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $652,500. Thank you.
Rocky, questions?
Thank you. Again, this is the same evidence from
Yes.
Realty.
Correct.
So the board has seen this already,
Yes.
did make a decision. And you weren't at that hearing, were you?
No, I was not.
And have you ever inspected this property?
I have not been inside.
You have this coded as VCD, correct? Which
Yes.
is complete vehicle dealership.
Yes.
It is not a vehicle dealership, is it?
They don't sell any vehicles there?
Well, it's not a complete vehicle dealership, or are you aware of that? Like, you have had an assessor on site looking at it, and I do have his closing memorandum from municipal board.
That's what we have it listed as, and that's,
And you don't have his notes from his inspection.
no, I'm not sure who inspected it last.
Well, I have this closing memorandum here.
Like, aren't those without prejudice from municipal board?
No, there's no value in here at all. This is just, you can look at it for information only if you care to. But I'm just pointing out that there is an agreement that it is not all vehicle dealership, that there's a warehouse portion, very large warehouse portion. So I'm just storage rent warehouse. So I'm just wondering if you were aware that other members of your department who've been out to see the site have said it's not a vehicle dealership.
No, I haven't talked to anybody about their case management conference on this.
Thank you.
Brent?
I have no questions.
Bob?
No questions.
Nichols, on with your presentation.
Again, this is just a follow through on the order revision decision. No difficulty calculating it based on the applicant's evidence. And this is bottom of page 3 was exactly what the decision was. 7, 7, and 5 on the site. And as you can see from the decision, in this case, they included the non-recoverables. They included our vacancy rate, our shortfall, and our request for a cap rate of 8.75. This is right on our request. Because what the problem with this property is, and was admitted, is it's not a vehicle warehouse. Vehicle dealership primarily. It is the square footage listed on the front is shows the breakdown in the space, and 31,626 square feet is for truck repair. 2,362 square feet is for a showroom. 16,905 square feet is for a warehouse. So the predominant use, yes, they are a licensed seller of Volvo trucks, but the amount of work they do in selling trucks is completely minor compared to the work that they do in repairs and in the warehousing portion. Now, the warehousing section has changed over time. Years ago, it was an oil warehouse, and now it's a parts warehouse for Western Manitoba for truck parts, and they distribute across Western Canada. Same concept, just a different product that they're warehousing. The small area on plan is because the property is somewhat strange in that it was built in about 5 different sections, and there are 3 listed mezzanine areas. We're ignoring the one of them. And I'm sorry, I don't have the breakdown here. It was all in the first order. We're accepting that there's an office mezzanine in the center part of the building, and that there is a a walkway mezzanine overlooking the showroom where the trucks are in. And what we're not accepting is that the warehouse and the mezzanine carries any value. At one point, it was finished off and it was to be used for training room, and it's at this point in time been mothballed, closed off, and not in use at all, and takes away from good warehouse space. That was what we presented to the board. It's not a racking issue here. It was just a question of obsolescence. So on that basis, the assessor's 51,783 would represent a physical area, and the difference here is that the 50,893 represents the usable area. And those are the numbers that the board decided. And if, again, there has been, and since the assessor said that they were not aware of what's going on at case management, I can tell this board that after working on this for 15 years, believe it or not, there might be some movement in looking at it as an industrial use, that it's not a vehicle dealership. I guess I'm not very good at my job at telling people that it's not a vehicle dealership, but it's an industrial property first and foremost. So we are moving towards, there's some hints that we could come to an agreement on it, and which means that the city would be wrong and our position is right. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Brett, any questions?
I have no questions.
Brett?
I have no questions.
Bob?
Yes, I do. Have you had access to their financial statements?
Yes, I have actually.
Okay. And then on the income part of the company, do you have an idea of what the sales were for trucks and the sales were for breaking down between truck service, oil distribution? When you're trying to say that.
Yeah. And I know what you're asking.
I'm just wanting to see just whether the sales volume for the trucks is a significant part of the business.
I can't remember the exact numbers. I can give you some anecdotal information. The last time we took this to appeal, it was heard in the fall. I asked them, how many new trucks have you sold this year? They said 1. How many used trucks have you sold this year? About a dozen. So it's, but you go to the service bay and it's full of trucks being repaired. That's the money.
So you're telling me all those trucks that sit in the lot and so forth on page 2 either belong to somebody else?
Well, no, some of them are theirs, but all of them are used, by the way. Some of them are theirs and some of them are on consignment. The ones available for sale. And those are the ones rimming the outside. And you can see at the top of page 2, those on the outside. And then the ones on the Oak Point Highway frontage. The ones on the Selkirk Avenue frontage are waiting for going to the repair shop.
Owned by somebody else?
Yeah, they're in for repair.
Okay, my last question is that when you got your area net rent, and then you got 50,893 with nothing, and that's the area that you're talking about that has been closed down, is not being used?
Yeah, the difference of, I think
Let me just finish. But in the meantime, you're still saying that it's being heated, electricity and water is being used for that area? Because you're still using a net rent for that amount of space for electricity, water, and heat, but you're saying that it isn't any rental. So it's sitting empty, but yet you're still putting all the utilities on there. Is that
I
correct?
don't think there's water up there.
Well, you're allowing 0.25 cents.
No, I'm only dealing with the occupied space. Our difference is 890 square feet. And what it is, it was a mezzanine that was
Well, I'm
built.
just talking about your calculations here on your
Right.
page 1.
Right.
You're using water, you're using electricity, you're using heat to get to your $432,000.
Yes, in the 50,893.
Right. And you're saying that space is not existent, or isn't being used.
Well, it's been mothballed, and with the way that they're currently situated, that what their preference now would be to demolish it or turn it into open storage, but the roof lacks load bearing capability for storage. So, but there's no use for it. And I'm not disagreeing this doesn't exist. I'm not disagreeing it was finished. I'm not disagreeing there's electricity going into there. I think there isn't water going up there. I'm simply saying that in this particular case, it has become obsolete space. And unlike the other ones where it doesn't even meet the definition because the other ones are racking, this one is an argument. Again, if you listed this for sale, a broker could not include this as space. An appraiser like me, if I was doing an appraisal on it, I could not list it as space, especially looking at that they've closed it off.
Okay.
You're free, the board's free to throw on the extra 890 square feet if you'd like, but.
No, I understand. I understand now. I'm a little off in my thinking, but I understand where you're coming from.
Good. Any conclusion? You're gonna start asking because you keep coming back.
No.
You're
Well,
good?
if you have to ask, I'm not going to do it.
Let's move on.
I just have one question.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Has either party appealed this? Or is it
This has been appealed to the municipal board. I didn't know about the proposing memorandum for something else, but I know for 2020 it was also appealed to municipal board.
by the city?
Yes, by the city.
We have 3 sets of appeals, 16, 18, and 20 on it. I believe I've appealed 16 and 18, and the city's appealed 20. And there is, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth what's happening now, but we have an agreement with all the tax agents in the city to go to the municipal board and request a test case. And one of the suggestions put forward by the city is that they are considering removing the truck dealerships from the auto dealers and just treating them as industrial. No numbers have been put forward, but there appears that they're conceding that point now.
Has it been discussed without prejudice in case management though? Because then we shouldn't be speaking.
No, there's no without prejudice. Without prejudice would be like, if we actually talk about numbers. And
Okay.
and this, actually, I don't think let's just leave it and say that we're talking about it and there's a bit more openness to our position than has been.
That concludes the matter. Let's move on to the next property. 1895 Brookside, correct?
Yes, thank you.
See, it doesn't say without prejudice.
I just thought that all discussions and those weren't public knowledge. So. So this is file number 19-5796. Address is 1895 Brookside, business assessment ID 34762. Total premise area is 53,369 square feet. It seems we don't have any adjustment for air conditioning on this property. Different subject property lease information, it's owner occupied. We have 2 photos listed below the subject property. On page 2, I have the comparables I've gone through. On page 3, I have the board decision for realty. It says it's based on the applicant's net operating income. So from my understanding, there is a discrepancy on the leasable area of about 4,000 square feet, and then the rate used was $7.93. This has been appealed to the municipal board by the city of Winnipeg, and the recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $643,080. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Same as before, I guess. It's all the same evidence and everything.
Yes.
And the area of disagreement on the space, you don't have any breakdown or like this has been well documented where we disagree, and I'm just wondering if you were aware of what we're disagreeing over.
This one I couldn't figure out what was I guess on your page 3 it says mezzanine.
Yeah.
Or wait, no, you have mezzanine, so I'm not sure if it's just a larger mezz space or a
Okay.
main area.
Thanks. That's what I had to ask.
Bob, any questions?
I'm sorry, but I'm confused. It says annual, we're on page 1, I guess. It says annual rental value 572, 570.
Mhm.
And then you say maintain 643,080, is
Well,
that correct?
that's with the added occupancy. Oh, wait, no, I'm not
Sorry?
sure what happened here, actually. You're right. It looks like,
I don't think
I
it
don't
should
know
be.
if that's,
Oh, your 572 isn't right.
yeah.
Yeah, and then when I go to Rocky's one,
No, you're right.
he shows 572, 580. Meanwhile, you had said 643, and I wasn't quite sure which is the number.
Oh, why don't you just look this up on the, are you logged in?
I'm not logged in right now.
I'll show you what this is all about.
Because if I add the base with the occupancy costs, it comes to 643. So I'm not sure why the 572.
Because it used to be 643. Somebody went in and changed it after the roll.
Okay.
Can we ask the secretary to look up the business assessment?
Brittany can pull it up if she'd like.
I'll just have to log
Okay. Well, you don't have to log in. It's on the internet.
in. I don't know if I can get on that without logging in though. Is it just to the City of Winnipeg website where you logged?
Just to make sure we're dealing with the right number.
Mhm.
Must be knocking down some pretty big chunks.
It's-
This kind of stuff. It's this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, did I go to the wrong one? Business
Bill, do you have the
assessment.
original?
There, I went, it's in the wrong one,
Yeah.
searching it.
On this?
The application
Yeah.
for this file,
Yeah. What does it say on the application?
I should have,
195796.
I have the application appealed at 640.
the original value is
52?
That's what we appealed. But when she looks it up, which I just did, it's going to say 572, 580. Doesn't it?
It says that on that the website, but then
Yeah.
it shows the appeal value
Yeah.
as 643.
So what happens is that somebody has done this to a couple dozen sites and they've just changed the business assessment without supplemental. We don't know how it happened.
So are we dealing with 572 or are we dealing with the 643?
That's what I was asking.
I'm asking the assessor.
The website pulls from I'd have to go into our tax system and see.
Go ahead.
See if there was a change. We didn't get a notice.
Just pulling a different value from our,
no, when I look into this program, it's showing, I think the last 2 years,
What's the number there?
2018.
Is there a difference in the total area?
there is on this one, from mine, from the applicants.
Between the Rockies and the cities, there is.
Yeah, because it was 49,000, this is 53,000.
So, just based on what I'm seeing here, the value that was appealed was the 643,080, and that's what I'd be defending here today. This would be, the 572 would be pulling from something else in our system, but the value that was appealed that we're defending is the 643.
Are there any supplemental notices in the system to change this?
I actually can't access the tax system when I'm remoting it on this computer, so.
Dylan, are you able?
Sorry, what is the address? Because I haven't used it.
1895 Brookside.
So this was appealed by the appellant?
Appealed by the city to the municipal
Or
board.
you appealed.
But if you do add the base annual rental value plus the total occupancy cost, you get the total annual rental value, so the number that's coming up to the right there is wrong.
Like 572.
Yes, as long as you add the total occupancy and the base annual rental value, it does come to the,
643.
yes, which was appealed.
So if the notice comes out at 643,000 and there's been no supplementals filed, you're saying that the website, the public website is in error?
So
It would-
this shows right now, super value.
Yes.
And if I look here, there are no new notices sent out. So this is the one value.
Okay, so we'll be using 643 as the city's number. Because that is an error here.
I noticed this on another one that we've heard.
We'll see when we get there, Rob.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just, $1,900 Main was also a different number.
Which one?
1900 Main.
We will check that one after we finish this.
Lisa,
Hmm?
no, never mind. That was our error. Skip that.
1900 is when you did a recalculation.
Yeah, no, that was our
The
error. Never
1900
mind.
main, it shows.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so we're dealing with the 64308 for the city. Got that, Bob? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, Brent, do you have any questions?
No,
And I've got no questions. Rocky, did you ask, you said you already did your question.
no, I didn't. I just,
Now you're gonna put your presentation, right?
right. I'm glad someone caught that because we've noticed this, like I said, on a couple of dozen where there's been this mystery change. And when we prepare these 2 days ago, we go to the website and we click the number and show you what it's showing on the website. Sometimes it was changed, sometimes it wasn't. We're again following the order 100%, and it made it quite easy because on the order says that they decided on our net operating income, and that's shown on page 3. And in this case, what we did is we just clipped our presentation and put on the 7.5. There's an issue with some excess land on there, which they didn't grant. But regardless, that ended up being resolved on the second appeal on the land itself. So it's not a contentious issue. So the number was $8 and $5 on the square footage that we submitted. Now the difference in the square footage is to explain on the top, the plan area, architect's plan 48061, 1,136 square feet, was built as an office addition. It overlooks the repair area and it has its own separate entrance and it's right up to code. It is rentable square footage by anybody's definition. What is not rentable is the 3,000 square feet, and that's shown on page 7. Top right corner on page 7. What this area is, the underside of it is what they call a valuable parts storage. So believe it or not, truck parts are ridiculously expensive. So the ones that are really pricey are kept locked up and closed off. And then they do use the top, on top of the roof of this for pallets. And you can see that, not pallets, just, yeah, there's pallets, that it's fenced off. There's some lighting up there. It's not rentable space. Again, that does not meet a definition. An open mezzanine is not meet code for human occupancy, and can't be considered either by a realtor or an appraiser or an assessor as being attributable into the market to any special value. It's storage that's been secured off in a particular area. And that's what the board decided, and that number works out to $497,440. That's my presentation.
Any questions?
No questions.
Bob, questions?
I guess it's just a difference of opinion. When I hear.
Wait, this is time for questions, Bob, not for just difference of opinions.
Okay. Well, it's in defense about the fact that he's saying that this area is not for rent. As a rental space, but it's just that it's used for a different scenario. And the fact that it's such an important product, it does have a value.
Auto dealerships, that's the difference.
And it should not, in other words, when you say it should be included, I mean, you're gonna have to have that space, you gotta be somewhere, you gotta have access to it. So why isn't it all part of the same thing as to whether I show a truck or whether I show parts on the bottom too? It's still in effect space that is being used for the whole operation of it.
That was your question? I think it was a statement, but we'll leave it at that. Brent?
All right.
Well, I'm going to respond to that.
That was a trick.
Yeah, I know you're afraid of that. You probably looked at.
Well, I'm responding to you.
Let's not get both of you.
No. You've probably looked at houses at some point in your life and taken a look at a listing or an assessment. Now, people use their basement. They live down there. They put bathrooms down there. Why is it never included in the space? It's the same reason. The professional standards and the consistency does not recognize that as a rentable or saleable space. It offers some utility. The question is that utility a large factor or not? In the case of these industrial shops, believe it or not, it's a negative value. We would rather have clear high cube space than to have it segregated into a bunch of low overhead spaces, because this is what they're in the business of doing, needing the large cube. And that's as simple as that. It's a definition of the product as to what constitutes rentable space.
Let's see that you've agreed to disagree between the two of you, and
Well, I move on.
we'll move on.
Why do you say, well, never mind. I'll shut up. I'm very argumentative
Thank
today,
you.
but
I'm not kidding. On with you.
That's the thing over the non-compliance, so I'm not sure.
The next one?
Yep.
Okay, just 1 second here while I clear this off, okay? I'm a little bit behind. This is 1066, Naren? This is the one that's non-compliant.
And there's rebuttal.
Yeah, just one, let's get it up first and see what I have a feeling this won't be going far fast. Okay, you want to read us your non-compliance? And well, the information first, then your non-compliance.
Okay.
sorry, before this starts, I have a point of order.
Sure.
We've never been notified, and I know the assessors told you, it's the first time we've seen this. Based on past practices at the board, there's some serious issues here. Number one is a proper notice of an offense hasn't been given. Second is whether or not business assessments are part of the realty. And what I sent you, by the way, was the board order they're referring to and misinterpreting. So what I would ask right now is a preliminary issue is you either dismiss these right now or adjourn them so that I can engage a lawyer to defend these properly. All of them. And if not, if you're not going to dismiss them, then I need to have them adjourned because I need a lawyer. I checked with Jamie and he says, I can make that request. He says, don't make it sound like you want two kicks at the cat. I'm asking for dismissal because I got no notice, and that's not fair. Now, we'll go.
You're talking dismissal of the
request. Yes, of the request. And if not, if it's not being dismissed because there was no notice given, then we need to have it adjourned so I can have them attend. And we, by the way, already have a date of July 29th set up for a similar case.
Was there
I did,
notice given?
I just followed the procedure for submitting the briefs for BA, which is different than obviously realty with more of the notice. So I just followed the BA business assessment 48 hours to the board.
Do we not usually have an advance notice of it?
2 years ago, it was required for business.
I don't know.
Can we have a few minutes of, you guys can stay, we'll go.
Oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Well, we shut off the camera when we.
Okay, shut off the cameras. Go ahead, you can go on.
Now, when it goes to hearing, I'll just give you a heads up. Whose writing do you think that is?
Who's ready?
Yeah.
Ready, we're live? Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. We're going to deal with these matters as they come up, one at a time. And we don't have enough information until you put your story forward. So we'll hear your side of it first. And then
Well, if you're going to go through them, I will ask for an adjournment then so I can bring in legal counsel. This is beyond my scope of handling. If you're going to want to hear them, I can't do it. I need a lawyer.
why don't we hear this first one first? So we at least have some information that we can deal with it.
Okay, I mean, I can't stop you if you're not going to do it. Will you actually give us a signal?
Yeah, give the signal.
Okay, to my crowd.
So we'll start with the file number 19-5825, address is 1066 Nairn Avenue, business assessment ID 23395. So for this one, the assessor requests the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation. Section 53(3)B of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if reduction of assessment is ordered, that it follows section 5432 of the Municipal Assessment Act. So if we turn to page 4, there's no expenses provided for the 2017 expense questionnaire. It shows John Kerry, president, and signs off. If we turn to page 6, I've provided a company search for the owner for realty. It shows that John Kerry is the director information. If we go to page 7, I have the Focus Motors company search that shows John Kerry is also a part of this company, and no expenses again can be provided if it's common ownership owner occupied. So I'm asking based on inadequate information. So the failure to provide information requested, which is the missing expenses, just showing that there was common ownership, that they would have care and possession and control of this missing information. And then just other similar vehicle services, like the ones we looked at where I didn't ask for non-compliance today. They fill out that they're owner occupied. They don't provide a rent, but they provide expenses. So I'm basing it on the inadequate, the missing expenses today. So.
If you don't mind, Mr. Newfield, we could ask some questions If it's okay with you?
You can ask questions, I can ask questions, we can all
Right.
ask questions.
I'm gonna ask you, and on the field, it was done on the assessment. Was this requested then?
For realty, no, it wasn't, it was missed. No one did the company search for those ones, they were done on this. Just this assessment.
Shall we make the decision?
I just have one question.
One question, go ahead.
So to your knowledge, in the creation of the BA role, do you ever use actual utility costs? Or are they standardized across all property groups?
It would be the same utility costs applied to each.
So then of what benefit for the BA role would the mailer be?
Just to review,
Let's speak up, please.
yeah, to review the information, I guess we would normally look at rental rates, and if it's owner occupied, we could look at the occupancy cost, but specific to this, we wouldn't have changed the occupancy cost base.
Oh, you wouldn't?
That was my only.
So is it, you okay with our decision that we made?
Sorry?
Are you okay with the discussion we had prior?
Yeah.
Are you okay with the discussion we had prior that we? If it wasn't asked for at the realty assessment, we're not going to allow it now. So we'll move on without the non-compliance. They'll all follow suit.
Okay.
Correct.
So just speak to just,
They're all the same?
so that they would all be based on the same premise of no expenses owner occupied or asked for realty.
Okay.
So then I just want to know if it'll follow.
No, we're not going to,
Okay,
Allow
so
any
just
of
hearing it once and that's
we're hearing it once, that's it.
it. Okay.
Okay? So we'll, not going to give the non-compliance. On with your presentation.
So I have to continue.
Is that okay, Mr. Now you can handle it?
I was just gonna point out one thing on here, and I agree with that, is the writing on page, no, you don't know how to identify this, page 8 and 9.
Mhm.
That's my writing. I submitted this because its business was sold, and we saw what had been submitted by the owner, and we didn't have to reference.
We've dealt with it. On with your presentation,
Okay,
please.
so to continue on with 1066 there, the total premise area is 17,422 square feet. We have the base annual rental value of $11.92 per square foot. Lower area used for air conditioning. Bottom of the page, I have the subject property photos. Page 2 is just the rent comparables we gone over, and then I placed the board order on page 10. So it is an adjusted net operating income. The city had originally used a net operating income of about $197,000, and Mr. Neufeld had asked for $156,000 approximately. So the NOI that was adjusted was about right in the middle, it was about $172,000. But I do think when I calculated it, it is based on the $11 per square foot, and then possibly some other parameters changed. My recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of the $247,920. Thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there was, you said I had asked for a different number, but they just adjusted it. They didn't give you the actual amount. They adjusted it and applied an 8% cap, right?
Yeah, so from what I looked at, I didn't touch any of the other city parameters,
Right.
but when I changed the management and then the rental rate, I got close to the NOI that would be
On NOI 172.
172.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's the NOI. Yeah.
Yes, so I
And then-
think that they used the $11 you asked for.
Well, 172 is clear, but okay, fine. I'll get into that in my evidence. Thank you.
Bob, any questions?
No question.
Brent?
Any appeals to the municipal?
This one wasn't a Hilton score.
Other questions?
Mr. Neufeld, on with your presentation.
Okay, there's no disputes on the rentable area. I'm so happy. We worked this backwards on page 3 and very, very simple. It comes out to 1042 a square foot, and that's what we've applied. That's what the board decision was earlier. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Bob, any questions?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What was the value for the realty that you asked for per square foot?
I'm not sure.
So I reviewed the brief and it said $11. So the only way to use, there's no 1042 in either brief. So the only way I could work it back was to use your $11 and then change the management.
And that could very well be. So which would you rather lose on, 5% or?
Well, I don't think we lose on the 5% with BA. I'm
Sure
just
you
trying
do,
to
because if you're going to argue,
Well, no, that's what the board
11 should
decision
be
was,
decided.
but the
You're
board decided
acquiescing.
the rent management rate. I did not decide the management rate. There was no 1042 asked for in either brief. The only way to work it back would be to change the management to the 7%, which you asked for, and to use the $11 you also asked for.
Now, if you are making that argument, you're acquiescing that there should be a 5% non-recoverable rate, which then would apply to every other realty decision that was made.
Well, no, that was the board's decision to make that. I'm not understanding. We're looking at the
Okay.
rental rate per square foot.
I just say pick your loss, and it doesn't matter to me, or the owner. Still pick it up the other way. So, thank you. That's my presentation.
You asked your question because you.
Oh wait,
Yes.
sorry, I cut you off questions. Do you have any more good questions like that?
Any more questions, Bridget?
No
I didn't mean to
questions.
cut you off. Sorry.
Brent, questions?
I have no questions.
Bob? And I've got none. That'll conclude the matters. And we'll move on to the next one. Next one will be 950 region, correct?
Yes.
And you are ready.
Thank you. This is 19-5874. Address is 950 Regent Avenue West. Business assessment ID 33664. We have a total premise area of 15,620 square feet. We use for realty base annual rental value per square foot of $13.94. So if we turn to page 9, the decision for realty was an adjusted net operating income with a capitalization rate of 7.5%. The net operating income works out to about $150,375. Looking at both information that was submitted by the city and the applicant, the only thing I could work out was using the $11 the applicant worked for and changing the management. So that was done. Today I'm just defending what was done at Realty for the city, which is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $253,560. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, questions?
None.
None? Bob? No. Brent?
Aye.
And I have none. On your presentation, Mr. Newfield.
Same.
We're not going with the non-compliance on this.
Same as the other one, we worked it backwards, and I'm going to make a request if the board is going to change it to follow through with the realty decision. If you put in the 5%, the rent might possibly be $11. Without it, it's $10.14. So if you're going to put it in at $11, I request that you put in there at the request of the assessor who's accepting the 5% non-recoverables.
Well, we'll leave that alone.
That's my case. Thank you.
Any questions?
Are we dealing with 5% non-recoverable for BA?
Well, I'm saying I'm not disputing your conclusion. I'm saying that you want it included. If you're arguing it should be included, I think the board has the right to say it was based on your request to have it included, which then turns around. And when we have our great 5% argument, who knows when they're going to blame you for it. And I wouldn't want that to
Now,
happen.
Rocky, there's no need for that.
No, but I'm just being honest. I don't want to cause a problem for anyone.
As they say, pick your fights.
Okay,
This isn't one of them.
okay, sorry. retract everything.
Thank you. We were at a question, were we not? Yeah. Go ahead, take 2 minutes.
Did I do that?
We're live. Brent, do you have any questions?
I have no
Back in
questions.
order.
I have no question.
Bob? No question. And I've got no questions. Thank you very much. That'll conclude that matter. We'll move on to 1424.
This is,
Give us 1 second.
Yeah, we're a little slow.
I'm not that fast at pulling the trigger. And we are ready. Whenever you are ready.
this is file number 19-5876. Address is 1424 Regent Avenue West. Assessment ID 39474. The base annual rental value per square foot is $13.16. Total premise area of 26,563 square feet. So, the board order shows an adjusted net operating income on page 9. And my request today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $409,320. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Newfield?
Did the city appeal this decision?
No,
And what was your calculation, or did you do a calculation as to what the board order would signify for rental value?
$11.
Thank you.
Bob? No questions. Brent?
I have no question.
I have no questions. On with your presentation, Mr. Newfield.
Same issue as before when we worked it backwards. To be clear, on page 3, we did not include the non-recoverables in calculating our estimate of the net rent, so we can't be sure with what the board did. It says adjusted net operating income. We had other cases where it said based on applicant's income, so we knew for sure. So we're not out to try to fool anyone. It's a question of, if you follow the order back without the 5% in, it's 1043 the rent. And I would not disagree that if you followed it back with the 5% non-recoverables in, it's $11 a foot. And we are applying 1043 because we don't know what that number was, what that decision was. And certain chairs at their own discretion have inserted in the order, and certain a definitive answer, and not all of them have. That's my presentation.
Questions? None? Brent?
I have none.
Bob?
No questions.
But on the order, this one was specifically based on an adjusted net operating income.
Correct.
So if you were recommending the 5% at that time, right?
That is correct.
So they would have gone with the higher number, would they not?
We don't know for sure. And you're asking a very difficult question, because I've already been very insensitive already in this hearing. And if you keep asking me questions, I can't stop myself.
Well, you can take the shots at me on.
Okay, I will take a shot. Certain members of this board have made it very clear that they will not include the 5%, and have said so in hearings. And in this particular case, one of the board members has made it clear in a hearing that he will not be putting in the 5%. And that was my decision on whether we should include it or not.
Okay. That will conclude the matter. Nobody wants to throw anything else at it? We will move on to the next property, which will be 964 Regent. Give us 1 second to open it. 964 Regent. When you're ready, Brittany.
Okay, so this is file number 19-5875, address number 964 Regent Avenue West, business assessment ID 6806. So we have a total premise area of 66,193 square feet, broken into 2 premises. We have a blended annual rental rate per square foot of $11.58. So this is owner occupied. So if we turn to the board order on page 10, we have again unadjusted net operating income with the decision. This has been further appealed to municipal board by the city, and my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $909,720. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Do you have a calculation on the board decision or an estimate of what you believe they would have applied?
Yes, I had a blended rate of $10.22 and a 7% management. Or they use the 7%.
Thank you.
Brett.
I have no question.
Bob.
A little clarification for me. When we go to page 3 and page 4,
Yes.
in your opinion, these are not adequate documents or information. If you're asking for information, this is suitable. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we would be requesting expenses for owner occupied properties.
Sorry?
Like on page 3 and 4 of the income expense questionnaire.
Mhm.
Normally when it's fully owner occupied, we may not expect a rent, but we would expect expenses provided.
So all we gave you is the income, no expenses, and that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
You're done? Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, on with your presentation.
Our calculation is shown on page 3. Again, this one is adjusted net operating income, same concerns and issues before as to unspecified whether the 5% was there or not. And in absence of direct language, we would of course default to position favoring the owner the best, because that is what's called the burden of proof. And that works out to the rates we've shown blended at 968, which is actually 1040 and 850 on the breakdown. And I just wanted to check one thing on the air conditioning. Yes, I think we're on the same page. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Questions, Brittany? Brett?
I have no question.
Bob? Conclude the matter. Next property up, 1370 Dougal. Me when you are ready.
This is file number 19-5811. Address is 1370 Dougal Road. Business assessment ID 2510. We have a total premise area of 20,652 square feet and a base annual rental value per square foot of $9.58. There's some photos at the bottom. If we turn to page 2, I just have some comparables that were submitted for the realty. On page 3, I have the Board of Vision order, which just shows an adjusted net operating income. And for today, my recommendation is to maintain a 2020 annual rental value of $241,440. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Was this decision appealed?
Not to the municipal board, no.
Okay. And did you manage to do a calculation or an estimate, we'll call it, as to what they may have decided?
Yes, I came up with a net operating income of $168,160. When we did lay in parameters, I came up with, if we had changed management, the blended rate would be around $9.09. But again, that's all I could come up with.
Thank you. Bob, question? No question. Brent?
I have no questions.
I have no questions. On with the presentation, Mr. Nico.
Same issues before. We're looking at the rate we had calculated. It says adjusted net operating income. Again, stressing the burden of proof. There's no indication of whether the non-recoverables were in or out. And our number is 859 rather than 909. Of course, both are lower than the applied rate of 958. Thank you.
Questions?
What was the rental rate you asked for at the Board of Vision Realty?
I don't have that in front of me.
Thank you.
Brent?
I have no questions.
None. Bob? None? None. On with your presentation. That's it. Concludes that matter. On to the next property at 1717 Waverly, 300, unit 300. When you are ready, Brittany.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5877, unit 300, 1717 Waverly Street. Business assessment ID 35873. We have a total premise area of 18,748 square feet with a base annual rental value per square foot of $13.97. I just have the photos at the bottom. If we turn to page 10, we have the board order, which is based on the applicant's evidence. The city has further appealed this municipal board, and from what I could tell, the applicant asked for $11 for this, and my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $306,060. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Questions, Mr. Neufeld?
No questions.
Bob?
I have a question, but I don't know who to ask it for.
Well, right now you're asking questions of the assessor.
Okay, maybe it's my auditing background. Of all of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties that in effect have not abided by supplying the required information, when I take a look at some of these documents, almost every one of them has rental income, went all the way down to the bottom, no expenses, and it looks almost the same as if it's all filled out by the same person. And yet, I'm assuming these people, these companies are all owned by different people.
Some of them would be actually same owners.
Sorry?
Some of them would have the same ownership on the docket. When I was doing company searches, but I think that
it looks so familiar.
Yeah.
With each one is doing it the same way. It doesn't seem.
with the company searches, it showed a lot of the dealerships are owned by the same person, but that was kind of pertaining to my non-compliance argument. So that's why I didn't bring up anything else.
Brent?
I have no questions.
I have no questions. You felt on the presentation.
Yes, this one is a little bit clearer to figure out because the wording was based on applicant's evidence. And what we were able to figure out was that they changed the capitalization rate from our request from 8.5 to 7.5 and kept in the rest of the different valuation numbers. And you'll note that we did not use same vacancy rate or shortfall or non-recoverables. This is not city parameters. This was site specific, and we applied structural reserve rather than 2%. And it did work out to exactly $11 a square foot. In this case, we were comfortable with the knowledge that this is how they had made their decision. And because of the wording, based on the applicant's evidence, and $11 was the decision. And we request that the board change it to follow this as the no new evidence has been submitted. And should the city choose to appeal, that is their business. Thank you.
Questions? Bob?
No questions.
I have no questions.
And I have no questions. Let's move on to the last property. 1400 Kingston Boulevard. When you are ready, Brittany.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5827. So for the original address I printed on the briefs was 23 Rockwell Road, and it was only because they hadn't updated the updated address, which is the 1400 Kingston Boulevard. So I didn't include that there. Business assessment ID 51645. So we have two separate premise areas. One would be for the basement. We have a total premise area of 52,837 square feet for a blended annual rental value per square foot of $12.75. We have owner occupied, some photos at the bottom. Page 2 is my rental comparables. Page 3 is the Board of Revision order, decisions based on an adjusted net operating income. And my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 annual rental value of $802,380. Thank you.
Questions?
Oh, I should have stated it's appealed to municipal work by the city.
Now questions.
Sorry, and did you attempt to estimate what values the board order may have come up with?
I found a net operating income of $540,000, and there was some adjustments made to the parameters, and I came up with a blended rate of about 1137. But again, it all depends on what parameters were changed.
All right. Thank you.
Bob? No questions. Right.
I have no questions.
I have no questions. On with your presentation, Mr. Neufeld.
First of all, I didn't prepare this presentation and the numbers are incorrect in size. I would certainly like to argue that they're different, but I don't have them to give you right now. This property, just as a background on it, was originally assessed on the submitted drawings rather than the as-bills. And there are numerous changes on the as-bills. And that was the pictures that I had sent in this morning. I went and visited there this morning to show that, and I think you've got this, and the racking issue, those are my feet there. And this is one of these properties where there's racking. Now, but the thing is, the square footage is wrong. However, if you're following the order, it's not making a difference because you follow the money. Who cares what the square footage is? The only off would be the actual cost to occupy, and it's only going to be on certain parts of the area.
Just on the air conditioning.
Yeah, it's the air conditioning, and that is definitely an error, and we didn't pick up on it either. The actual air conditioned area is approximately 15,000 square feet, and that includes the showroom, roughly 10,000 square feet, and the mezzanine office area, 4,822. So the balance is not air conditioned. And we didn't correct that. I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to make the correction right now because it's wrong. But the square footage is wacky, but oh well, it's a fight I don't have to have. So approximately 37,000 square feet is not air conditioned, and this is the basement and the service area. And the reason this is so much larger than the other dealerships is because this is one where the basement does offer some utility, and we're not disagreeing with it. It's just a question of how much. that was one of the major issues at the hearing was how much that utility is. And you can look at it in many different ways, but we accepted the overall decision. So the difference on the air conditioning is $12,585. So I'm just going to make a small change here. On our page 1, the air conditioned space should read 15,822 square feet. That should extend to 5379. So cost to occupy are 116,865. The rental amount wouldn't change even though the space is wrong because it's based on an order, so it's a gross number on income. So combined, it's 685,459 divisible by 12 is 685,452.
Want to round that?
Yeah, I did. Well, I don't.
You have to make it.
Yeah, so 685,452 is divisible by 12. You want to round?
You can't round it. If you round it, then you gotta find another number.
Yeah, then. Well.
Okay.
So that was a mistake that I just corrected this morning, and that's why it hasn't been submitted to you. But you can see from the pictures I've shown you that the roughly 37,000 square feet is not air conditioned, and the rest of the value follows the board order, and the cost to occupy represent the actual sizes. And admittedly, there has been some discussion ongoing with another assessor on the air conditioned space. It's a newly constructed space. We were trying to have someone come to the site to look at it, but with COVID, no one's allowing inspections. I don't know, they just allowed me to have an inspection because I just a fixture, but they're not allowing outside parties in, right? No one's allowing outside parties in. So that's the number, 685,452, following the order. Thank you.
Any questions?
Did you provide myself with the updated build floor plans last year at business assessment?
They were you last year?
Yes.
Sorry, I had given them to Jan Trosham, who did the realty, and I had her on business 2017 hearing. Okay, sorry, that was the stuff. Okay, yeah, right. Last year, no, I thought Jan had given them to you.
I was provided the floor plans, and I did update the premise area to reflect what those plans said for mezzanine area. So are you saying that the mezzanine area is still wrong from what
Oh,
you
no,
provided?
it looks to me like the basement area, because the plans actually say right up front, basement area is 15,520. And it's stamped right on the plan.
Do you have a copy of that? Because everything I was provided, I calculated the numbers here today.
Yeah.
I reviewed the floor plans thoroughly, so.
No, I that's what I'm looking at. It looks like that was picked up because the last time was 54,182, and yeah, you did. It was changed.
Did update the mezzanine to what was
Yeah, for this hearing, I'm not changing my square footage at all. Okay, I'm going with your number 52,837. So that we're not disputing that here today. I'm just saying as a note of information that it's 15,520 and it is stamped on the plans. This is the main floor plan here. Oh, look at this. I'll get them to you. They're in PDF format.
Question, Fred?
So if in your work out here,
Let me get back to this.
So is the 16,618 at the 950, is that basement?
Okay, sorry. 16,618 is the basement now.
So not 15,500?
Well, no, the actual is 15,520. It's that I'm sorry, I just found the actuals here from the plan and yeah, we're just about dead on the 36,219. So you're correct. That was corrected. Just the basement is at 15,520.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Bob?
I'm getting a little confused with all this.
Oh, well, we're not asking for a change in square footage, so no change. We're going to live with it. We didn't supply it to you. You know the rules.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to be clarified. For the 16,618, you're saying roughly 15,000 is not air conditioned, is that right?
No, about 37,000 square feet is not air conditioned. That's the basement, the 16,618, as well as the service shop, which is not air conditioned.
And this
And-
weather is not air conditioned?
No, it is not.
No shots.
You can't, it's not economical because of the air is always flowing through because they have exhaust systems, and it draws too much air, and it's really just too expensive. The doors are open all the time.
I can't speak to the basement space, but typically in Newman's, I had at the Audi dealership as well, and they don't have air conditioning in their service area, just big fans and stuff.
Okay,
So we will have to adjust the air conditioning.
thank you.
Got it? That concludes the matter. Thank you very much for a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You get away in the winter, have a good time.